The show where anything goes. Motivation, mindset, recovery, philosophy, and life. We become who we are through what we experience. We all have a story, and this is My Backstory with Josh Boyer.
All right, man. Here we are. The My Backstory podcast with Brandon Lilly.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure, brother. It's been a long time coming. You know, I've been talking to you for a while on social media, trying to get you on the podcast, and we, for whatever reason, logistically, it just didn't work out initially. But I'm glad that we're able to do it this way. It's better than nothing for sure. And hopefully, one of these days, we can do another one in person. Once all this virus stuff goes away and traveling's a little easier.
Yeah, I think in all fairness, the reason I got to be honest with you, I have a hard time doing podcasts where I'm the guest anymore. And I'll tell you why, because obviously if anybody's looked at my Instagram, they can see that there's been waves of change. There's been waves of self-reflection and hopefully growth. And, it's some of the stuff that I delve really deep into only lasts for a month. It only pertains to me for a month. So I feel pretty comfortable in saying that now I have a system that I've utilized and believed in and really been working at for a while. But, before, I hate giving information to people and saying, this is a thing that's helping me. People ride that wave and then I'm already onto something else. So, I try to be a little more careful, a little more, and I think it's part of my growth is just, you don't have to share everything that you're doing. It doesn't have to be this continuous like video reel of your life. So I kind of keep things under my wing a little bit longer now and take the time to really understand them, invest in them. And then I talk about them, and I think that's a more honest approach. So I say all that to hopefully say this is a more clear-cut version of who I am and who I will be for a while now, because believe it or not, through all this quarantine and lockdown, I've really tried to develop things that help me, through my day and help me organize my thoughts. And I wasn't able to do a lot of this stuff because I was so fast paced before. And now I kind of have a way of looking at things in a system that I don't know that my life necessarily has to speed up to the level that it was. I was working really hard to spend time with my friends and family here at home. Well, I realized if I stop going 100 miles an hour, I get the opportunity to spend time with my friends and family at home. So it's stuff like this, it's like this right here, utilizing Zoom, utilizing Skype. I mean, a lot of people, I never used these things and they were just free tools that were available to everyone. I was just kind of rebellious in that regard. But since everyone has jumped on board and gotten comfortable with this, I can see this as a really, really useful tool for me as the world kind of opens back up. Even if I'm not ready to jump here and there and everywhere, I can still get my job done. I can still make important connections. We can still have great conversations. So, I'm glad we're doing this now. I say all that to say I'm glad we're doing this now.
Oh, yeah, brother. Awesome. Would you mind doing a brief introduction for the listeners? Just kind of tell people about yourself, where you're from, what you're into, what your story is a little bit.
Yeah. So I live in Kentucky, little bitty town called Berea. That's kind of the easiest place to get a geographic location from, or Lexington, Kentucky. We're about 25 miles south of there. I grew up in this area. I moved away after college, for powerlifting. I traveled around the country, kind of a gypsy lifestyle for a few years, just crashing on couches, crashing in gyms, wherever I could in the pursuit of powerlifting, and far exceeded my expectations in that. Became very, very competitive, was ranked near the top in the world. Won some really prestigious competitions, got to compete what I think with, every era has its legends, but I'm glad to say that I stood shoulder to shoulder with my era's guys. And I don't say that, braggishly. I say that kind of looking up at these guys. I mean, they're just unbelievable lifters. And I was glad to be a part of that. And on January 26th of 2014, I had just come off of two really kind of significant wins for myself in August and October of 2013 in Australia. After the second one, I decided that I was going to kind of take off through Christmas. I'd really been burning the kettle hot, and just pushing myself as far as I could go, as hard as I could go. and I knew my body was showing signs of the wear and tear. So I went to Mexico, had a really, really great trip down there, just relaxed. And then I started to get some requests and I would even say a little bit of pressure to compete in a competition in January. Didn't really have any intention of doing it. Didn't really seek to do it, but like so many times, the carrot just kept getting a little more enticing. There just kept being a little more like, well, we'll pay for your flight out, or we'll pay for your hotel, or we'll get you a rental car, that kind of thing. And none of that really mattered until one of the other competitors said that they were going to beat me. And that's a pretty telling tale of how my psychology was at the time. I didn't care about anything else except beating someone. So it was win at all costs. I really went through some like harsh training for about 4 weeks because I had basically been on vacation for about 6 weeks. Harsh training for 4 weeks, traveling 5 days a week and trying to put all this together. And I show up at the competition, ended up cutting weight, which I'd never done because I wanted to face this guy head to head and beat him in his own class. And I paid for it. I ended up blowing out both knees in that competition. My right knee, fortunately, was just a quad tendon and patella tendon. My left knee was quad tendon, patella tendon, ACL, MCL, PCL, and meniscus. The left knee was essentially, and this is not an exaggeration, when they went to check me at the hospital, first they thought I was in a head-on car crash because of the damage to my knees. They thought that, the engine block would have pushed into my legs.
Yeah.
So here I am laying on my back, and the doctor comes over. He was talking to me, but his assistant just immediately lifts my right leg, and it kind of comes off the table a little bit. Obviously, I'm in terrible pain. He lifts my left leg, and the top portion of my leg to my knee stayed flat on the table, and my ankle and my lower leg actually lifted up. So it was completely disconnected beyond skin. My kneecap had been severed's not the right word, but I guess they said it was so perfectly cut it looked like a surgeon's razor did it. So and the kneecap was actually up and to the outside of my quad about 4.5-5 inches from where it should have been. So it retracted with that tendon and spun around to the side of my leg. I guess when the quad retracted, it made space for that kneecap to fall in there. So I was really, really messed up. Went through a series of surgeries, 18 total over 4 years. And if you really want to put the context of that, each time I had surgery, I was 4 weeks on my back. So 4 times 18 is a 72. I hope I did the math right there, but that's 72 weeks out of 4 years on my back. And, it wasn't consecutive. So if you can imagine having a surgery, thinking you're getting better, everything looks good, everything's going well, your rehabilitation's well, and then you go in for another surgery because of infection. Get better, go through rehabilitation, start lifting, training again, another infection. And I was just plagued by infection throughout this whole process, and which put me on antibiotics for 4 years. I mean, I was consistently on antibiotics. My gut was a mess, which I learned very much the hard way. Affects your psychology. It messes with your it can enhance depression. It can enhance negative thoughts, and it's just a really unique thing to understand how much the gut biome impacts our mental health. So fast forward, April 12th of 2016, I sat with a gun in my mouth, not sure that I was capable of going forward in this. And I say this, basically because I've forgiven myself some for the time period that I was in, but I just didn't want to go through it anymore. I didn't want to go through that process of healing and then setback, healing and setback. Not to mention, I was alienated from my family. I was alienated from my friends. I'd really poured myself into a sport that, I thought one day there would be an aha moment where everybody would go, now it makes sense why Brandon went so far into this. Now it makes sense why he pushed us all away. Now it makes sense. And there was never going to be that day. I mean, there was just never going to be an understanding for why I didn't show up for Thanksgivings. I didn't show up for Christmases. I wasn't there like I should have been, and I didn't answer phone calls. I didn't return text messages. It was just a very, very self-absorbed existence. And, it was like I identified much later. I didn't really love the sport of powerlifting. I loved that people loved me for it. And, my family and my friends, they were just seeing this guy getting sucked into this madness, and it's not the sport's fault. It was my obsession with the sport,
Right.
and the desire to be the best. And, they, they weren't supportive of that because they wanted me to be well-rounded, normal, able to do this and also able to be myself. And I just wasn't able to disconnect the two. It was all or nothing for me. And so I viewed them as my opposition as well. I made them my enemies. And only when I fell, see, my parents didn't even know where I was competing when I fell. They didn't even know I was competing. And when I fell, really, I mean, not to say that I didn't talk to them, but it wasn't like I was giving them all my information or what I was doing or up to. And I called out to my dad and just started talking to him. And he was like, I'm really glad you're okay. This could have been a phone call you didn't make. And fast forward back to, April 12th of 16, he wasn't the first phone call that I made, but he was the first phone call where I really admitted that I was not doing okay, that I needed some help. And my dad showed up. He didn't know where I lived at the time. He shows up and, I'm in a cast. Well, I'm kind of skipping around here, but when I first came home from California, he showed up and I was in my cast and he said two things to me. He was like, I'm sorry. And I love you. Like, I should have told you these things every single day. So that started some healing, but I was still committed to getting back to the sport, committed to that. So I was still at odds with my parents a little bit in that regard. Okay. And then after I realized that the clear distinction I had the morning that I put the gun in my mouth was I still wanted to live. I just didn't think that Brandon that I had been deserved to live. I felt like all I'd done is hurt myself, hurt people around me. So it wasn't like I just wanted to get away from life, because I didn't. I just didn't know the answers to fix the life I was living. So, conversation with him, conversation with other people really just started, like Bert Sorton, for example. Bert was a big influence, and I never even came out and told him exactly what I was going through. But shortly after is when I officially got my job with Sornex. And that helped me get on a pathway to real recovery, because now I had stability. Now I had an opportunity to build myself back out of this hole. And just like, I don't remember who said it, but it was so profound. If you've made 1,000 mistakes, it's going to take 1,001 good choices to get you out of that hole. It's not overnight. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have other setbacks. And that just gave me, it was like, okay, then I start digging. I start making one good choice after another and see where this goes. And just like bad choices, just like hard times, you gain momentum in a positive way as well. And that's, absolutely, really coming up just past 4 years of this, where I've really dedicated my life to trying to live a little better, trying to live a little lighter, trying to live much less for myself and so much more for other people. Anything that I do as far as self-investment, self-growth is not just to sit here and pat myself on the back and tell you or your listeners how awesome I am. It's really, so I can be a better version of myself, not only for my family, my friends, for Sornex, for the people that root for me that I don't even know. It's that sounds a little bit like egotistical or like I'm needing that. I'm not, but I certainly set a poor precedent of what a human being can be to those same exact people. I hope that I can show that there's another side to that as well. And if somebody is in that gray area where they're trying to figure out where they go from, quote unquote here, maybe I can help there too. And that's really what I live my life for, is to be a shining light for health, wellness, mental wellness, and then also for love. Like, love is the only thing that I believe in that can cure all. And I know that sounds hippy dippy, and I know that sounds cliche. Love is not going to cure cancer. Love is not going to eradicate the world of AIDS, but it will make comfort and peace for those people that have those afflictions. And I think that if the sooner we can realize that love as an essence is what we need to give each other, is what we need to believe in and invest in, not necessarily like lovey-dovey, but just real appreciation, respect for the fact that people beside you are human too. They have mistakes. They have dark corners of their mind. They have skeletons in their closet. We're all the same. And I think that the sooner we can start forgiving ourselves, the sooner we can start be a little more understanding and forgiving those around us. And the sooner we can start turning this whole thing around and being positive and light for each other. So That's me in a nutshell,
Dude,
man.
I love it, bro. That was probably that was the best introduction that I've ever heard, dude. That was amazing, dude. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um, so I'm gonna start this, man. By I don't know if you know the background behind doing this 12-part podcast series, so I'll just share it real quick. There was a guy named Rory Hamill who was on my podcast, and he unfortunately took his own life last month, and I was devastated by that news, man, because you have people on your podcast, and for me, doing all of them in person, you get like a human connection with that person, and you become, for me, like these people become friends to me, where it's like I'm reaching out to them, they're reaching out to me, and it goes back and forth, and I knew he was struggling, but I also saw the way that he was like flourishing, going and helping other veterans and like really being a pillar in the community of mental health. And to know that he succumbed to his demons was like, it just like crushed me. And I was like, man, could I have done something different? Could I have like reached out more? So there's all this guilt and this questions of like what you could have done to change it. And so I was like, I need to do something that like, keeps his legacy going. So that's why I decided to do a 12-part podcast series, specifically covering mental health. And so I'm glad that you're a part of this, man.
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked, because I struggle with, my biggest struggle right now is avoiding being cliche. There's a lot of people that are talking about, mental health and gaining clarity and all of these things. And it's what's sickening about it is that these are advertising ploys as well. These are very, very serious topics, but there's a group of people that utilize whatever is trending to create marketability, and it's something that I think is very, very important. It's something I discuss this kind of stuff extensively in my DMs and my text messages and phone calls and whatnot. But just, I don't want to diminish anyone that's out there publicly talking about it, but I have just felt uncomfortable getting into that arena, because I know how it can be for me. Like I said before, I don't want this to be, again, quote unquote, the Brandon Lilly show. I don't want to make things my problems that aren't my problems. I don't want to make my life bigger than the world around me, and I think a lot of people can start to dance to their own music a little bit. I've certainly done that. I've certainly done that in the past, and I've certainly been witness to people who put one thing out there and are doing another thing behind the scenes. And it just, I want people to really take mental health seriously, and I want people to understand that mental health is probably one of the most driving factors to life, however we perceive it, whether that's extremely good or extremely bad. It all ties back to the mental aspect of how we view ourselves. And I just don't know enough, or I don't have a good enough vision of how to do that publicly, continuously. So I dabble in it. I talk about it here and there. I talk about it enough to let people know that I'm open to it. But I have a hard time really finding content where I think my words, my share is more important than a psychologist or a psychiatrist or someone who's been active in this. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to take care of myself. And I think it's very easy for a person like me who has a following, who has had a little bit of that roar around their name at times. It's very, very difficult for me to still work on myself when I'm trying to help so many other people. So I've been a little bit selfish in that regard, but I've learned too that selfishness, when it comes to this kind of stuff, like if you need to shut down your Instagram for 6 weeks or 6 months or forever so that you can get some peace and clarity, do it. That's what I'm trying to do, is really try to take care of myself so that I can be a better version of myself for others. And I hope that over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, as I get some ground under my feet, as I feel confident in saying, you know what, I'm never going to be deemed quote unquote well, but I am better than I was. I'm never going to be a perfect individual. I'm never going to be so, healed, so to say. My life is always going to be work. And I think if anyone is honest with themselves, none of us are healed. There's a phone call that could come across right now for you, me, or anyone that would devastate us, that could literally relegate us to the couch in depression for months. So we are not healed. I just continually try to refine the process that allows me to function at a high level that allows me to function happily, and it also allows me to function outside of myself. I can get very, very focused on topics. I can get very, very focused on ideas. I can get very, very focused on myself. I don't want to get so focused that I tune out the rest of the world around me. You know what I mean? So I try to walk that fine line of, this is important. This is work you need to be doing. I just don't necessarily always have the answers. All I can do is share what I've done, you know?
Yeah. And I think your story, though, to be honest with you, man, like I used to, I use this example when I was doing a lot of men's work, going to a lot of like workshops and like really trying to get to the best version of myself, you know, and learning how to feel again. Cause I had spent a lot of my life being closed off, being very like, you know, putting a mask on for multiple different people and not really being authentic with who was like inside, you know? And when I was doing that work, I came across this feeling that like I was yearning for somebody that was going to give me their real, true, authentic story. Not somebody that's just trying to coach me. It's like, dude, you're coaching me. That's cool. But like, how did you get to where you are? Like, were you fed with a silver spoon? Well, if you were, chances are you and I are not going to relate because I didn't experience that. You know what I mean? Like, I want to know, like someone like you, I'm going to relate to you because you've been there. You understand what I'm talking about. You know, like when I express rage, when I express like this inner fucking like rage, it's like, you get it. You understand what I'm talking about. Like what these other like psychologists and psychiatrists, it's like they've had training, you know, through schooling, but they've never had the school of hard knocks. They've never experienced what life, I mean, maybe some of them have. I'm not going to like broad brush, you know, all of them, but like the majority of them have gone through school. They've learned some things in a book, but they've never experienced life, you know? So it's like someone can tell me like how to live my life and how I be my life coach and tell me how to do things. But it's like, if you've never experienced poverty, if you've never experienced loss, if you've never experienced tragedy and trauma, you can't see what I'm feeling right now. You can't understand it even, you know? So your story, man, for what it's worth is extremely powerful, man. And more powerful than I think you're even giving it credit, you know?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, you know, I think one of the hard realizations I had, and I'm going to tell this story. I think I've told it one other time on a podcast, but I kind of skimmed over it. So I really will. I mean, I might peel the scab back on it a little bit, but, you know, I think that for me, I got to a point where my life was so, I mean, I've been homeless at times. I've been wrapped up in drugs, alcohol, anything that you can imagine, trying to numb some of the pain. And I'll tell you the worst that I ever got, I think as a human, was when I really tried to find people that I could clear cut point a finger as like, okay, I'm not as bad as this person. I'm not as bad as this person, you know? Right. So long story short, I used to, you know, I was traveling all the time, going to cities. Big fan of Waffle House. You know, I post about that. It's probably kept me alive over the years, but I can remember there was a short window where I was so far down the rabbit hole. I would go drive around the worst parts of town, find a working girl, and go to Waffle House. I'd say, I'll pay you for your time. I just want to talk to you. And I would buy them a meal, have a coffee with them. This is like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning stuff. Yeah. And this was nothing sexual. This was absolutely 100% me, like desperate to find somebody who was worse off than I was. And you know, the sad thing about it through all of this is I gained more respect for these women. Now, don't get me wrong. They've made some serious life choices that have compromised their health, their wellness, and their happiness, but they were not giving up. And that was what I could not get over, was like, these women are out here on the street clawing, scratching. I don't care if it's for a kid. I don't care if it's for a drug habit, whatever. They're not giving up. And here I am, like at the verge of giving up. And some of the stories and the things that they've overcome, I mean, you can imagine sitting down across from, it was 8 prostitutes, I think, and hearing their stories, hearing their journeys. And it's like, they never had many more options. I'm the guy that had a good home growing up. I had a lot of things going for me. And here I am just squandering it because I can't get out of my own damn way. That was a hard pill to swallow because I was not above anyone. And that was a really powerful revelation for me, is that all of these women were so thankful that I was just the guy that wanted to talk to them. How sad is that? You know, like how sad is it that here I am looking for some kind of like, I mean, it was some kind of
validation.
I think, you know, like some reason to say, okay, I'm better than this person or whatever. Right. But what I found was that I wasn't. I was so disconnected that I was using them again. Like, here's somebody that's been used every way under the sun, and I'm using them again. And that's what almost every single one of them had a discussion about forgiveness for myself. Cause I would admit that I was like, here's why I wanted to pick you up, and we would talk about it. And it was just like, honey, you're not a bad man. You just made bad choices, or you done bad things. And it's like, Jesus Christ, like, how did I get here?
Right.
But that's where I was, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not hiding behind choices that I made. It's just, that's where I was. I couldn't get the fog out of my own head. And only when I really started to step back and look at myself, not only as a power lifter, but as a man, as a father, as a friend, as whatever you want to quantify me as, I was bigger than the sport. But I let the sport consume me in my pursuit of that. And what's hard for people to grasp, and I think, again, not trying to draw parallels between myself and Michael Jordan from a skill level, but from a level of, Michael Jordan is not a very happy person. If you watch The Last Dance, he was at odds with his teammates. He was at odds with himself, I think. He was at odds with everyone that tried to help him. He even went to war with Phil Knight at Nike, trying to make the Air Jordan brand bigger than Nike itself. So even though Phil Knight was the person who gave him his start, gave him his ability to make the shoe, he was still at war with that guy. And that's how I was with every single person I came in contact with. If you were a guy, the chances were you had more money than me, you were better looking than me, you were stronger than me, you had a bigger house than I did, a faster car, whatever it was. I made a competition out of every single thing I could. And all that really made me feel was less. Like, I don't have what this guy has, or I don't have what this person has, or this person has. So I was always mad at everyone, including myself. So, looking for ways, I want to back up here too, because I'm all over the place. But what I like about what you said right there is you went to these men's groups. I did the same thing. I invested in those things. I invested in the reading, the books, and all that kind of stuff. But here's what I found for myself, and I think it holds true now, is that these people, like, if you ask me to give you 100 things to do, like to really, like, quote unquote, qualify you as a man, or maybe even a good man, you're going to look at that list, and I guarantee you there's going to be 65, 70 of them that you hit right on the head. Right. And what men tend to do, or men like me tend to do, is I don't celebrate the 65 or 70 that I'm holding good on. I beat myself to death over the 30 of what you said I should be doing. So I start changing myself and modifying myself to be more like that. You're never going to find happiness in that model, because that's someone else's description, definition, decision on what a man is or what happiness is. So what you have to do, or what I've had to do, is look at, these are just suggestions. Where are the things that overlap? Where are the things that are common amongst all of these people? Okay, I might need to check myself on those. But over here, it's like, I have to, have a certain family structure to be a man. Don't agree with that at all. Because what if a woman walked out on me one day? It's not my fault, that she decided to leave or whatever. Maybe I can look at how I treated her, and that might be my fault. But if she chose to leave, maybe that's an opportunity to grow rather than to beat myself up. You know what I mean? And that's what I've had to do over the years with relationships, is look at just how poor of a partner I was. I was someone that took, and like, I needed the support, but I wasn't giving it back. So obviously I had some work to do, and I've just unchained myself from the idea that there's any set way or any definition or any structure that determines what a man is. My definition of a man might be totally different than yours. Doesn't mean you can't be a good man, successful man, contributing man of society. Doesn't mean that I can't be a good man, successful man, contributing man of society. Just because we're not the same does not make us different. And I know that sounds strange, but we can all be reaching the same end through different means, and it changed my whole life to look at God that way. What if God was so awesome that he gave you, like, you can't understand every language on earth. I can't understand every language on earth. But if God can speak to me through nature, and he can speak to someone else through Christianity, and he can speak to someone else through, Buddhism or Muslim, whatever it is, or Islam, I'm sorry. What if he just speaks all the languages, or she speaks all the languages, or the universe speaks all the languages? It just took us different paths to get to the same place. You know what I mean? So when I started thinking, maybe in terms of God, God has always been right, and humans just messed it all up. We killed each other to get to the same place. So if it works that way in religion, does it work that way for manhood? Are we sitting here, quote unquote, dick measuring about who is most manly, who has the best process to becoming a man, who has the best set of rules that defines a man? Or I'm over here just trying to live my life the best I can, and somehow I end up being a man too. It's like
Totally.
I've just tried to remove the structure of what that is. I mean, I don't want to negate from anyone that's doing these types of things, because I think their intention is good, and I think there's a ton of help to be gained from there. But I think at some point, if you're dependent upon those groups for years and years and years and years and years, how much have you really gained for yourself? I think it's important to invest, to learn, to apply. But if this at some point doesn't go, okay, I've gathered all I can from this group, I'm still going to be good with this group, but I have to go over here and define myself.
Yeah.
I don't think if you don't ever get to that graduation point, then you're just holding on to the safety blanket. Like, you're looking for other people to validate who you are and what you are. Over here, well, yeah, I wear, weird clothes and colorful clothes and eat crazy colorful food, and for some reason that offends some people. I don't know why, but I get the messages saying so. But it's like, that's okay, because I'm okay with it, and I think that's my aim, is to really encourage people to gain strength in themselves. Use all the support, use all the help that you need, but at some point you've got to get strong on your own. And I think that is the real transition that I've made in the last couple of years, is that, I am a part of Sornex, but I'm not Sornex. I am a part of my family, but I'm not my family. I'm myself within those entities. And I just have to make sure that what I do, the process that I'm charged with, is taken care of, and I do it at a level that makes me happy. And I've luckily found that way through all the processes that I'm talking about. But it's hard. Listen, if you're looking at a drug addict that just took a heroin needle out of his arm, and you're trying to get him on a path of healing tomorrow, might be a hard conversation to have. But if you keep showing interest in that individual, if you keep showing up, if you keep taking stock of how that person is doing, they might just say, man, I don't want to do this anymore. And that's your opportunity. You can't force healing down people's throats. You have to be there when they're ready to come, and that's what I try to do, is just put myself out there in a way that, hey, if you're ready, I'm willing to talk about it, but I'm not going to tell you how to do it till then.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I've done with, like 2.5 years ago, I decided that, I was done with alcohol. So I was going to get sober and just be like, man, I'm done with it. It doesn't serve me anymore.
Sure.
I'm over it. I never wanted to become like the preacher, sober guy that chastises people that drink, because that's not my intention at all.
Sure.
But I will share my journey. I'll share my story from getting off all my opiates. I've had 6 back surgeries, and so like I was addicted to every opiate and every benzodiazepine, every sleeping pill you can imagine. I was taking all of it, and I quit all of it cold turkey. But I share my journey of like that recovery of quitting everything cold turkey. Having the 3 seizures from my brain just going into fucking didn't know what was going on, and and then I share the journey of like, dude, there's been times where I've had really bad anxiety, like panic attacks, where I've taken another benzodiazepine because I couldn't function. Like, I tried the breathing, I tried the ice bath, I tried everything. I couldn't get myself to like snap out of it. And I share it not to be, to put all my laundry out there, but I share it because I don't want to give somebody a false sense of who I am. Like, I've always wanted to be like authentic, be like, hey man, I'm human. I'm fallible, dude. Like, I fuck up, I make mistakes, but the point is like, I will always get back in the saddle. I'm always going to keep fighting. I'm always going to get back into the game and be like, hey, listen, like, I might slip up, I might like make a mistake, but I'm human, and me sharing those failures, I think is more powerful than giving somebody this false picture of who I am, when it's like, I wanted people, whoever meets me in person, I want them to know that like who you're meeting in person is exactly what you see on social media or any other platform that I'm sharing information on. I'm not any different, like, this is the real me,
That's the biggest distinction that I made probably 2 years ago as well. I look back at my life, I look back at choices I made, I look back at photographs of, from 2010 to 2000, really probably 17 or 18. And it's like this 7 or 8 year window when I was so lost that I tried to become who I thought people wanted me to be. Yeah. And all that led was to more sadness, more harm, more hurt. And, and it all sounds like weakness. It's not weakness. It was me trying to be strong in the ways that I thought people wanted me to be strong. I thought if I was physically strong, I thought if I was big, mean, and tattooed and cussed a lot, that was filling that void that the earth was opening for me. But I was never that person. I never felt comfortable in that regard. It felt like an effort to be that person, but I continued for like years and years and years, because it fit the mold of, okay, maybe, just maybe, it's not me that's this way. I'm doing what I think I need to be doing, and everybody else is rejecting it because they're not hardcore enough. I thought I was moving more into like that smaller circle of people that were like, yeah. But that wasn't their fault. Wasn't anyone who disagreed with me's fault. It was my fault for not being authentic and true. You know what I mean? And I'm just glad that in the last couple of years, I've been around people, like Sornex is ultimately one of the biggest driving forces in my health, because I met people like Rudy Reyes, people that have suffered and gone through hard times. And Rudy's like, man, we just got to do something. We got to figure out a way to help each other, to get better, to train harder, to do all this stuff, and it's like, okay, here's a guy that I look up to, obviously has a decorated military career and has been through some serious stuff. And he's talking about his problems. He's talking about his frailties, his weaknesses, his self-doubts. Maybe I can too. So Rudy is one of the first people that I really put as like opening that door for me to walk through.
That's awesome.
Bert Soren being another one. I mean, I could run down the list of people in Sornex that I've had these type of conversations with. And without Sornex, I'm not so sure that I would have ever allowed myself to open myself up in that way. So, it's very, very nice to have people in my life that are like, hey, whatever you need, we got it. If that's time, go silent for a while. If you need to just, whatever it is. And I think that's one thing that this lockdown, that quarantine has possibly done for a lot of people, because the messages are way, way up for me through this. Yep. Now, and I'll say that because I think a lot of guys like myself that were hot paced, going 100 miles an hour, were able to slow down and realize all of that speed masks a lot of feelings.
Oh yeah.
So slowing down has been really, really good. And I think it's also opened some eyes to people on themselves, and they've reached out and they're asking me questions like, where do I start? I think for most people, the greatest place to start is journaling. And I think that works because if you're like me, I like in the way that my brain works like a carousel, and I see something that interests me. I'm watching it, but it's out of sight now. I see it come back around. I'm watching, and it's out of sight again. So it's like I have to have something to grasp onto and slow my thoughts down for. And writing it out allows me to underline words and go back and focus on those thoughts with intention. And there's one of those words that I hate. I'm just living so intentional now. No, I hate when people like try to do it like that. Like I take intentional feelings and apply intentional thoughts to them. It's not like some out of body, out of mind thing. It's very, very in the moment, in my mind, in my body, addressing what I'm thinking about. So I think journaling is a great place. If there was a step one, then I would absolutely tell people to start there. But it's not something that I think is for everyone. But I encourage people to start. If you can't know if something works for you if you don't try it. So that's what I was talking about over those last few years, trying things. And you mentioned ice baths and saunas and journaling and those kind of things. Those are all popular. Those are all kind of trendy. Not all of them are going to work for everyone. Right. Ice baths tend to be something that I really, really love. I had a really kind of a breakthrough one not too long ago. Actually, it was almost like doing a psychedelic trip of sorts. I got really, really overcome with it. It was a hard one. So, that one does more for me. I get more mental breakthroughs in ice than I do in a sauna, but I feel more physical release in a sauna than I do from the ice. So sometimes it's matching those puzzle pieces together in a way that fits. Excuse me. Like I didn't used to like to train in the morning early. I did not like it at all. But after I've had a cup of coffee, after I've journaled, my body and my mind are awake enough to go work out. It was just the succession and the order that I was doing things that didn't work. So that's where you can see this whole process becomes very, very individual. Most nights now I sit in my garage at 9 o'clock or so, I go down to the garage. I open the garage door. I listen to the birds in the backyard. I'll sit down, might journal, might just listen to music, but I'm not doing anything other than just thinking. Like, I'm just sitting there with myself 20, 30 minutes, go read for 20 or 30 minutes, and I'm asleep by 10 o'clock. You know, those things help me. That might feel like torture for someone to go sit and listen to birds for 20 or 30 minutes every night and then go read for 30 minutes every night. But if you can model after that and find, okay, it's not reading and listening to birds, it's 45 minutes of nothing else. Yep. You know what I mean? It's just 45 minutes of still. So that might be the lesson for someone to hear is it's not this particular thing. It's just the time it takes to do this particular thing. And that's what I'm trying to get down to for myself is just find these, like the bumpers on bowling. I'm trying to find the parameters. Hey, go within these two parameters and find your happy place. Go between these two parameters and find your happy place, because I'm just so sick of people looking at me or looking at others thinking they have all the answers. Fuck you. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what that person's been through. Get off your high horse. Like I said, we all have a phone call that we would dread. We all have a phone call that would change the dynamic of our life forever. And, you know, we think, well, that could be losing a job. That could be losing my spouse. Think about some of these pieces of shit that are sitting out here telling other people how to live their life, mocking how others are living their life because it's not up to their standard. And then their spouse dies or they lose their job. Then what? Like, is it get up by your bootstraps? You know, you're just, you're worthless because you're not doing anything about it. How can you do something about your wife dying? How can you do something about a company terminating you because of this COVID? So to those people, I don't really involve myself with them because I was that person too in powerlifting. You couldn't touch me. You couldn't hurt me until I got hurt. And I don't wish ill on those people. I just wish grace upon those people so that they could understand that possibly their life has been really, really easy and comfortable for a long time, and they've forgotten that it can fall apart.
Right. Now, I think you said something beautifully earlier too, that like the fact that we all have different roads of getting there. You know what I mean? Like, so like I used to be the same guy where it's like, you know, don't be a pussy, mindset's everything, especially when I got off all my drugs. Like, if I could fucking do it, you could do it.
Yep.
And then when I woke up one day and was like, hey man, like, why am I being such a judgy dick? You know what I mean? Like, that's not like, it doesn't always work for everybody. You know, like I'm not this guy that's trying to be a preachy dude. It's like it's what worked for me. And, but you know, I've had bumps and stuff along the way that's taken me off the path. The other thing you said that I really liked was like when I was going to these seminars and men's retreats, I was definitely guilty of like finding the things that I was failing at, like finding the things that I was like, fuck man, I'm totally way off on that. And being like, dude, how do I fix it? How do I fix that? I was totally neglecting the things that I was doing pretty good. I was pretty good at, you know?
Well, they don't maintain their monthly subscription if you're healed. You know what I mean? It's like they have to continue to guilt you, and they have to continue to show you your weaknesses. Now, that is a fine line, because sometimes you need to beat someone over the head with something before they realize it. I get that. Right. But I also think that there should be, at some level, all of these things should have a graduation point. Like, hey, you've been with us 3 or 4 years now. That's awesome. We appreciate it. But I think to grow, you got to spread your wings. And I think because what's very, very dangerous, is when somebody starts with good intentions. I'm raising my hand when I say this. Starts with good intentions and then starts to believe their own bullshit. Starts to believe themselves as a guru. Starts to believe that they're infallible. Starts to believe that everything they say has more meaning than anyone else's. You know, and I think that's a very, very dangerous thing. I think it's we've seen it over and over and over in a lot of these groups where the figurehead will get caught up in some kind of scandal, whether it's, you know, with money or power, whatever it might be. Just take time to stalk your idols a little bit, you know, like take stock of them. I think there's a lot of people that still idolize Michael Jordan, but again, after The Last Dance, you can see maybe if you weren't necessarily like one of the greatest guys in the world, if you were just a role player, because the world needs fucking role players. Like, there's somebody, I am not a money driven guy. Like, to do $1 million, to focus and like kill myself for $1 million. I had a guy ask me a great question about that one time. He said, you better hope you don't live in LA for that $1 million. You know what I mean? Like, because $1 million in LA doesn't get you very far, but $1 million in Tennessee or Kentucky, you can live your whole life in the back of a holler and never be heard from again. So it's really understanding what you want, what you need, and how to get there. It's not $1 million because some millionaire is trying to sell me a self-help book that's going to make me a millionaire. It's not that. It's understanding this is the house that I would like to live in. This is the kind of property I would like to own. This is what I would like to look like. Oh, that's only $350,000 per se. Like, let's just throw that number out there. That's a lot less pressure to put on myself than $1 million. You know, ultimately, I'm going to have to earn $1 million over a lifetime to pay for that. But it's not necessarily like going to the office until midnight every night trying to get that $1 million in my bank account. I point to those people because as much as they say they want to help, why aren't their programs free? If they have all this money and if they're so happy and they're just so excited to give away all this help, why are they charging you a premium? And that's the thing that I look at. They are addicted to money just the same as I was addicted to lifting more weight. It's the same model. And the problem with that is people are going to hear this and they're going to be like, oh, that dude's like, whatever, I'm not going to work with him or whatever. Fine, don't. I don't want to push that message. $1 million is never going to make you happy. I lived on a big corner lot in a golf course most miserable years of my life. The house I live in now was built in the 70s, and it's been renovated room by room to be the home that I wanted to craft. You know, it's the place that I wanted to live in, and it's just like me. It's got scars, it's got character, it's got history. I don't know what a person gets when they can just remove all that. I mean, you see it. They're not just building the newest house and buying the fastest car. They're altering their face through plastic surgery. They're doing all these things. What are you chasing? That's what I want people to answer that question. What are you chasing? Who are you trying to please? Because when I answered those two questions very honestly, I realized that neither one of them brought me happiness. And I started to modify. I started to change things about myself as far as what I was chasing, what I was trying to do, and what I was trying to achieve, and who I was trying to please, so that I could say, I didn't lie to anybody today.
Yeah.
I can lay my head down and get a good night's sleep because I'm not looking over my shoulder anymore. I'm not afraid of this business deal falling apart because it doesn't have to stay together. You know what I mean? Like it's a little bit slower approach to business and to life, but it's working at a pace that I need. Now, if somebody's out here making Jeff Bezos money and they're happy and they're living their life, awesome. But I would guarantee that Jeff Bezos is probably a pretty miserable person. He can buy excitement. He can buy fancy things. But at the corner of his mind, like his whole life is consumption and creation. He is perpetuating those two things. And it's like at some point his ideas are going to run stale and the need that people are going to have is going to be so high. There's going to be another Jeff Bezos and another, and maybe that satisfies him. But I just don't think that when we pursue things for the ends of money, that we really get the root of what we're chasing. Because money can always be more and money is always fleeting. You know what I mean?
I love it, dude. Your message is fucking super powerful, man. I'm digging this. I want to ask you, you talked about, getting to that point where you had the gun in your mouth and you wanted to end it all and be out of pain.
Yep.
What kept you from pulling that trigger? What kept you from going over the edge?
I'll tell you what it was, to be honest. It was my son, and it was also the recognition that I did not want to die. I just thought that dying was a solution to a lot of my problems, as I said before. Right. But the distinction that I made, I was disconnected from my son's life. I was not a good father. I was not I was there a lot, but I was not engaged. I should put that to say, at the ball games, mile deep in my phone. Oh, good job, kid. Great job. Good job. And realizing that I missed the whole thing. Just wasn't engaged. And what I thought about is I kept the thought in my head. I would rather my son think I was a coward than I didn't love him. I would rather him think that I was a coward than I didn't love him. And I just kept saying that over and over and over. And then I thought, well, what if I stopped being a coward and I just started loving him? Mm. And it was like, and I didn't tell you this either, but I never really took pain pills for my injuries. I thought, oh, that's just weakness. You don't need that shit, that kind of stuff.
I did that in my last surgery. It's terrible.
Dude. Yeah. And then like at night, when the pain would be so bad, I go get the pill, take the pill. Well, pain started a little earlier the next day. Now it's a pill at 7 p.m. and now it's a pill at 10 p.m. or what. And then it's like, oh, I'll just take 2 at 7 p.m. It just like this slow erosion. But that morning also, when I put the gun in my mouth, I'd also taken a handful of pills. Like I wanted to make sure, like the same way that I did mushrooms the first time. I thought, well, this isn't working. So what's the next step? Which was take more. That's the way I did. That's the way I did with the pills. Is I was like, I took a handful and I thought, okay, this is going to be it. And then it was like just watching the clock, waiting. It was like, this is too slow. So got the gun, went through all these thoughts, went through this emotion. Then it was like, oh shit, I can feel the pills starting to take an effect. Had to go throw those up. You know, it was a very ugly, sad, it was not a very proud moment. It's like I had the moment where I was laying in the bathroom after I'd thrown up, you know, obviously strings of vomit out of my mouth on the floor, hanging down from the toilet. And it's like, this would have been a real shitty way for somebody to find me. You know what I mean? Like there was just a lot of sadness in it. And thankfully, from that moment, I really did just start as simply as like, you're not a coward. You've been a coward. You haven't loved. You can love. And then it was just a slow, like, you know, it was like a percolator. It just built until now. Like, dude, I wake up literally at 5:15 every morning, so excited to wake up. And I wish I could bottle that. I wish I could mass produce that. I wish I could market that. But I don't know how to tell people how I got here other than I tried everything that I could possibly do. And I'll tell you, it goes back to a quote that I made in powerlifting that I'm actually proud of. And it's the one about shoving your head underwater. You know, if somebody shoved your head underwater, how hard would you fight to live? You would kick, scream, claw, bite, scratch, whatever, because you know you've got a minute, maybe a minute and a half, and you're gone. Yeah. We got 70 years. That motherfucker's ticking. Why aren't we fighting that hard every single day? Why aren't we fighting every single hour, every single minute, every single second to live the life that we want? So that's the way that I've gone about it. I try to imagine myself. I felt like I was drowning. I felt like I was suffocating in those days. And I'm sure you can relate to that. Oh, yeah. So if the same decisions put me in that mode, I can start processing decisions and taking actions that will get me away from this. And somewhere along the way, the right people got involved, the right encouragements happened, the right engagements happened. And I just started to believe in it. I just started to believe in myself again. I started to believe in my ability to impact people for good. Like not, oh, I made them stronger. No, I opened a door for a woman and made her smile. Yeah. A big tattooed 300-pound man removed the fear from this woman for 1 second. Like, I'll take it. That's a +1. And that's where the +1 mentality started for me. It was like, okay, here's a decision. Here's a crossroads. There's a fork for me. If I go left, I'm going to take away from my ultimate goal. If I go right, I'm going to add to it. +1 every time. Nothing in our life stays stagnant. Nothing in our life stays neutral. If you don't eat today, you lose weight. If you eat too much, you gain weight. We don't ever just repeatedly stay the same. We're always a process of recalibration. We're always a little above, a little below, but we're always trying to find that main line. And for me, it just became proactive choices. Like when I'm on a diet plan or I'm on a nutrition plan, I don't go to the restaurant and say, hey, let me see your menu. I say, this is what I need to eat. What do you have that looks like this? So I remove my ability to have to look at 15 other things that might be more tasty or desirable. And I get what I need to further myself towards the goal rather than adding distraction and by adding all those other choices. So I know that sounds really, I'm like fucking, what about Bob? Baby steps, baby steps, baby steps onto the bus, baby steps onto this. I am literally that way with myself because I know that my inclination is to just have a good time. And having a good time can be any number of things that you want to describe that as. But now it's like, okay, when you go to this event, you're going to have 2 beers. That's it, 2 beers. 3 is a negative. So I talk to myself all the time before I go into places that I know are maybe pitfalls or would maybe be snares for me to catch myself up in and have regret tomorrow. And it sounds crazy, but that's almost how I've had to do it, is just be fully aware. And you can't do that when you're thinking about 100 other things. I think that's added to the presence of my life. I think it's added to my ability to stay focused on what I'm doing with, who I'm with and where I'm at. It's allowed me to focus more on that because it's like, if you have like right now, this is a 1 in 8 billion conversation, more or less. It's a one-on-one conversation, and especially if we were in the same place, maybe at dinner, especially if it's a significant other or somebody that you haven't seen in a long time, who on that fucking phone is more important than that 1 in 8 billion opportunity sitting in front of you. So I tell myself, the phone is a +1. If I can leave it down, if I can check it when they maybe go to the restroom or when the check comes or at the end of dinner, whatever it is, that's my +1. Anything less is a minus.
Yeah.
So I just continually set I'm still competitive as hell, but I still set little goals for myself, and they're micro goals. Obviously, I know that, like I said, I want certain things in my life. I have certain goals for myself as far as I would love to have maybe get-togethers with men like yourself to talk about some of these things in a way that's not monetary. It's not anything more than just people. Like, I love to cook, so I'll cook for everybody. You love to do something else, and you'll do that. Somebody else might paint. Hell, they might paint everybody a picture. Who knows? Right. But I just want to create organic experiences for people to get together and share. So I have things that I need to do to work towards those ends.
Yeah.
If I don't pursue that, I'm already admitting that I'm doing something other than what I want to do. So why would I not pursue those things? Why would I not have the awareness of what I actually want? And I mean, that's what a lot of my journal is. It's just recalibrations of, do you still want these things? What are you doing to achieve these things? How have you worked towards that? And it sounds obsessive compulsive, and maybe it is, but I can tell you right now, my life, my happiness, every single aspect of it is better with that approach for me. Again, not saying it works for everyone, but until you find your way, like, obviously I'm not sitting here, detailing the minutia every single second of every single day, because I've developed patterns. But in the beginning, it was pretty I was very, very, I was scrutinizing myself all the time. Like, how can I be better? What can I do more of? But it helped. It helped me get where I am and helped me get the direction that I'm going.
It's good shit, man. What are your thoughts since, like, where you were and where you are today? Have your thoughts changed on the idea of suicide? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I had a great grandfather commit suicide when I was 18. And obviously the normal surroundings that come with that were, anger, hurt, can't believe this guy, like, what a selfish act. There are still times where that's the case, I believe. But I also look back at the situation now through older eyes, through maybe more experienced eyes, and I see a man who, I stayed with him when my great grandmother went in the hospital with an open heart surgery. She had a valve repaired. He didn't know how to write a check. He didn't know how to do laundry. He didn't know how to cook for himself. Yeah. Like, he was in a terrible, terrible way. And because of their generation and the type of woman that she was, if the doctor said, lay on your back for 3 weeks to let this heal, she would have come home, and day one, she would have been cooking him breakfast. She would have been ironing his pants. She would have been doing all this stuff. I had conversations with him because I stayed with him that the rest of my family didn't get to have. I got to hear his fears, his doubts. He's like, I'm just a burden to her. I just make her work too hard. I'm too hard on her, this kind of stuff. And I think, looking back on it now, and maybe I'm just, trying to smell the roses in the situation here, but I really think it was an act of preservation for her. I think he knew that she would have come home and worked herself into the ground trying to take care of him, and then he would have ultimately been left with, I'm alone. So that might be the selfish twist on it. Right. He didn't want to be alone. And maybe, knowing some of his past, it may have been a selfish act. But I am choosing to look at it from the full spectrum of the things that he talked to me about, the worries that he had. I think he probably did it to alleviate her pain and stress. And to be honest, she lived quite a number of years afterwards, very healthy. So obviously I'm very, very sad about his loss. I was very, very grateful that she got to live. I was very grateful for the connection that was brewed, I guess, from his death, because my mom, my aunt, myself, we would all go down there on lunch and have lunch with her every single day, just to make sure that she knew that she was loved, cared for, and looked after. So it might have been a gift. But overall, suicide, I have no grounds to ever judge or point the finger at anyone. I point the finger at the people in that person's lives. Again, not to judge, but just maybe to say, how could we have helped? How could I have done more? How could I have listened? Maybe, and there's no answer for that. But if you look at the Japanese culture, suicide's a very respected decision. maybe not understood, but it is respected in that culture. They have suicide forests where people go off to be by themselves and commit their act. So I think we need to be a little less forgiving, because here's the thing. We're all going to die. We're all going to die. The loss of someone, the grief that we feel, I would say some of it is articulated towards what that person might have become, but a lot of it is what that person left me without.
Right.
How did this person leave me and they knew I loved them and this, that, and the other? Stop. Because it's not about us. It's not about you. Yes, there's pain. Yes, that pain is real. Yes, that pain is allowed. But I think if we can look at all the spectrum, my great-grandfather, he was an alcoholic. He was a hard man. He grew up in hard times through the Depression.
Yep.
He really, really battled with alcohol. And like I will say, he was not a very kind person when he was under the influence. But when my mother was born, he stopped. He was a person who saw, okay, I have a granddaughter now. This is a little different. I have to, because he had sons. So, to a son, it's like, well, yeah, daddy, he'd get on the liquor, that kind of thing. But to a daughter, it's a much different kind of thing, or a granddaughter, it's a much different kind of thing. So I don't view him as this person that was just terrible and menacing and mean and cruel and harmful. I view him as this person who was really trying to live better in light of the years that he didn't. And I think at the end, 83 years old, I think you're allowed to close the book if you make that decision. I think if you've come to terms with your life, if you feel like you've lived long enough, and maybe if you feel like your life is a burden to someone else, I can at least accept what's going on here, and just like, we make concessions for people all the time, or, we'll excuse one because we have investment in them, and then we'll point the finger at the other because we don't know them. I just think we need to do a little bit better job of understanding, like I said in the beginning, all our blood is red. Most of our makeup is exactly the same. And I guarantee you, every single person, regardless of how well they try to present themselves, has skeletons in their closet, has dark corners in their mind. I've yet to find the person that will be real that I can't have a conversation with and enjoy. It's usually when people are trying to posture or hide things away that causes conversation to stall, that causes my interest to wane. I'm interested in excited people about their life, and it doesn't always have to be happiness. If it just has to be that you are trying, you just are wanting more from this life than what you've gotten. And that's all. That also sounds a little counter to my idea of the idea of more. It's not more in material. It's more in experience. It's more of self. It's trying to get as much out of this. Dude, I have this thing right now. I'm 38 years old. Men in my family do not live to 75. They do not. That's why a few months back, I put on my Instagram, somebody asked me what I was training for, and I said I'm training for my 75th birthday. I'm training to live that, because when I was powerlifting, I was 348 pounds to be this massive hulking individual, and I thought if I lived to 50, I didn't try hard enough. I really believed that.
Yeah.
And the injury was a gift, because it showed me, one, the sport will pass you by while you're still in it. Two, injury will accelerate the fact that the sport passes you by. And no matter how, Jordan is still brought, I keep using him because I've been watching The Last Dance, but he's still brought up as one of the greats. But in the day-to-day commentary of NBA basketball, Michael Jordan is a memory, So no matter how high you climb, no matter how high you fly, or how great your success is, you're going to die. And I think that is a powerful recognition. The other thing is, you're going to die without anything that you're killing yourself for. So start investing in people, because that's the only way you're going to live on, is the way that you treat people, the memories that you create with people, and the feelings that you give people. And to me, I would rather my son say, God, my dad was awesome. He was a great dad. He was good to me. He gave me a chance to speak when I had done wrong. He gave me a chance to understand what I'd done wrong, rather than just, my dad left me like $100K when he died, because that's going to go away faster than my memory would. Right. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I have no right to tell people how to live. I have no right to tell people what to live for, but I sure know that I lived for a lot of wrong things for me. I made more money per year than I'm making right now. I lived in a bigger house than I live in right now. I had a brand new car that I drive around. My truck now has 280,000 miles on it. And it's kind of like, why would I give up on this truck is my trusty steed. This is my, if I'm the cowboy, this is my horse. Yep. And, but I think that ties into some of my deeper belief is that we are a disposable society. We don't look to fix things. We just look to replace. A bulb for the TV that I have is $438. I can buy a brand new TV, same model, same brand, or like model, same brand for $368 right now. The bulb is $458 or $460, whatever it is. And the TV itself completed is $100 less.
Right.
What's the inclination to fix it? My washer and dryer goes out. I go to look up the parts, and I find the parts, and I go to look at the labor hours, and it's like, okay, probably a little over my head. So I call the guy. I can buy a new washer for $200, or new washer and dryer for $200 more than it costs to repair it. So when all that mentality trickles down to our cars lose value at 100,000 miles, our homes lose value after so many years, like, when do we start devaluing people? When do we start thinking, oh, I can't fix this relationship, I just need to replace it? Or I can't heal that person, I just need to forget them. It's a very, very dangerous psychology to adapt, that you always need the latest, greatest, and newest. Because to somebody, you might be the entity that gets replaced. And that's not a good thing, especially if you're doing the work to really be valuable. But everybody's got to get to that point where they realize the greatest asset you have in this life is your health, your mental health, your mental wellness, as far as your physical health and your physical wellness, because those two things allow you to be your best, and those two things will allow you to be the best for others. And that's what I try to strive for. I don't look at things as what I need. I look at things or what I want. I look at things when I need them and what it's going to take to get what I need. And like this truck, I mean, I put $6,500 in it last year. Yeah, kind of stupid on a vehicle that's got this many miles, but it's a lifetime repair replacement on the warranty part that was $5,000, and then the other is tires. So it's like, I can't get past the fact that I need tires, so I'm going to have to spend that money. And the other one, if it ever goes out again, it's a lifetime repair. So it was a calculated risk, but you know what? I get in this truck and I think of all the places I've been. I think of the times that I slept in the back because I had no home to go to. I think about times that I slept under the stars and it was the greatest night of my life. I think about, it's given me 280,000 miles. Like, I've seen 280,000 miles of this country from this seat right here. And I don't know. I'm just a little sentimental about it, maybe. I guess.
I dig it. I want to ask you too, on that same vein of human connection. What are your thoughts on social media in terms of mental health? Do you think it's a detriment to mental health, or do you think it's a positive for mental health?
Well, I'll tell you this. If you'd asked me this is one of those questions. If you'd asked me 3 or 4 years ago, I would have said, I think it's a negative on mental health, but I also think it's a pure reflection of how we use it. So if it's a negative, which it was for me for a long time because of what we talked about, I was very polarizing. I was very much stirring the pot, pointing the finger. So when you go on that route, and a lot of people choose this, a lot of people choose to be antagonistic because it drives likes, it drives follows, it drives, it kind of drives your value on social media because you're willing to draw this line in the sand. Well, I definitely have lines in the sand that I've drawn, but I also know that I'm married to my beliefs until I get further information. You know what I mean?
That's a great point.
I don't try to put these very polarizing, very fixated lines in the sand out there for public consumption because, one, I can eat crow very quickly. I enjoy challenging my stance. I enjoy reading literature. I enjoy reading studies, and I enjoy talking to people with opposing stances because then it either opens my ideas or my mind to new information, or it makes me go, wait a minute, my scale of understanding was not as broad as I thought it was. Or it reinforces the fact that, hey, I've studied this thing inside and out. This guy tried pretty hard, but I still stand on my side of the sword, and that's okay. But it doesn't mean that we have to disagree on everything. You know what I mean? And as soon as I started, if I would post something and somebody would come on and they would just say, well, this is stupid. Okay. Block them. There's no, if they ask me, why are you doing this? I think this is silly for your goals. That's a conversation point. But just to casually drop in and say, this is stupid. Okay. You're not the kind of person that I want to engage with. Block. Yeah. I give people chances to discuss. If somebody hits me up with something kind of pointed, I'll very politely ask them to go to the DM. I was like, let's discuss this in private so we can Because just like this, if you were to take context of it, you could probably make me look bad in some regards. So I like my context to be very, very structured, because you know how comments are. If we get 5, 6, 7 comments deep and somebody chooses only to read one, and I might be reiterating something they said, but they can paraphrase that and put it to my name. So I try to keep those conversations private. I try to keep them very thorough so that there's no misunderstanding. And if at least there is disagreement, we have an understanding of what each other was trying to accomplish in that conversation. So I realize that social media does nothing without my input. So social media itself is not bad. Social media 100%, because of the algorithm, is a reflection of you. So if it's not enjoyable, if it's inflammatory, if it's angering, if it's sad, all of these things are because of things that you've entered into that search bar or the follows that you have. You know what I mean? So if it's a negative thing, you might want to take a real hard look at your actions within social media, because I think social media, it's the reason we're talking. It's the reason I work with Sornex. It's the reason that I met my friends. It's the reason I've connected with so many awesome people. You'd have a hard time convincing me that this is a bad tool. It is properly, if properly applied, but it can be improperly applied, and then it can be a real problem. And I think for people who are looking for emotional growth, mental growth, you need to be very, very cautious of this, because if you continue to follow the same accounts that you've always followed, if you continue to engage in the same way that you've always engaged, this is true of life or social media, you're going to get more of what you've got. But you have to actively change. You have to actively seek people that are doing things that you really like. And I mean, that's why if you look at my page, you're going to see training, you're going to see art, you're going to see poetry, you're going to see photography, you're going to see music, you're going to see all of these aspects of who I am. And I don't encourage anyone to like me for all of those. You don't have to like me for any of them. But if there's one vein that we connect on, maybe something good can come from this connection. Maybe something positive. You would not believe the people that I get excited to read their messages. They're like, dude, I love that song you just shared. Have you heard this one? And like, we are sharing fucking music. And the way that I am, dude, first of all, I just want to say this publicly. So if I ever suggest you to listen to a song in my passenger seat and you start talking, I want to throw you out the car. Like, because one, music is like one of my love languages. Two, I feel it. Like, I feel music so much different than I think the average person. I can hear a song right now after this awesome conversation, totally positive conversation, and literally be in tears in a matter of minutes. And then the next song, I'm happy dancing again. I just feel it. So when I try to, that's where I get to also, is like, I try to be very selective in what I share and who I share it with, because I've found times where I share, like Townes Van Zandt, favorite country writer, country singer of all time. He is, to me, if you were to look for the epitome of country songwriter, it's Townes Van Zandt. He's very different. He's very difficult, and he's very hard to digest if you've not been trending towards that direction. Like, if you're listening to Alan Jackson and George Strait and we go to Townes Van Zandt, going to be a little bit of an exodus. Okay. So, you know, I'm very hesitant to share a lot of his stuff. I share stuff that I think would be more popularized. So if somebody's looking, they find these songs that you might hear on the radio 20 years ago and connect to them. And then you find his deeper stuff. But the stuff that means the most to me never makes it to the internet, because I just don't want to deal with the conversation about, oh, this sucks. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. no, it doesn't at all. But no, I think social media has its place. I think social media could be an extremely, extremely valuable tool if people just learn to be themselves. If people learn to be a little more compassionate, if people learned or respected the fact that, yeah, it's an interface, but you might meet that person one day, and the fact that you mouthed off about it, well, might get you punched in the teeth 5 years from now. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, just treat people the same as you would if they were 6 feet away. That's what, keep in mind, 6 feet social distancing.
Well played.
Yeah, but that's it. Like, I just try to hold true of, like, I don't want to make anybody's days worse on Instagram, you know, especially with the climate of the world today and all that's going on. It's just, why the fuck would I want to add any more bad to it? Like, what do I gain from that? you know, and
100%.
I don't buy the fact that some men want to watch the world burn. I think that some men are burning and they just want others to burn with them. And I don't buy into the fact that every person is lost. I think that every person can do better, be better, and contribute more than we are right now.
Absolutely, man. I want to ask you one last question before we sign off, and that's if you could give one message to somebody that's struggling, that's like hurting badly in terms of mental health, you could give them one message to kind of help them out of that funk. What would that message that you want to share with them? What would it be?
It's a long one. I think I would encourage them to take their time. I think I would encourage them to slow down. And I would encourage them, if they can't seek professional help, if they can just find a friend that they can talk to. And if they don't have a friend that they can trust, put it down in that journal. Get your feelings down in a way that you can see them. Because like I said, for me, I was like the carousel. I would know, like, okay, here's a problem, but then it was gone. Here's a problem, but then it's gone. And it would be the same problem perpetuated for years and years and years. And only when I shared that with someone else was then it real. It was real at that point, because now they knew my secret. They knew my struggle. They knew my problem. And then, you know, at times where it was a problem that was too big for an individual, or maybe it was too complex for someone else to take on, I would write these things down and I would just try to break it down into fragments or structures that I could process slowly. Like, you have to give yourself time. There's no heal date. There's no heal point. This is always going to be a work in progress. As far as I know, there is no handbook on how to live your life properly in this modern age.
Right.
No one has it perfect. Like I said, even the guys with millions and billions of dollars, they've got problems. They've got bullshit they've got to deal with. They've got headaches. They've got a spouse that's mad at them for being at the office too much. All the things that everybody complains about just gets scaled. You know, a person that's operating around $1 billion has 500 people to take care of, whereas a person with a small business might have 5. But mental health is so valuable. If you are not, like, and I say this because I talk to a lot of people who are healthy of body, think about how hard it is to get yourself in that shape, but think about how easy it is to maintain that shape once you're in it. It's not very difficult to stay lean once you've gotten lean, because one, yeah, your body's working from a better place, but two, you've established a process. So just like with your mental health, think about how hard it's going to be in the beginning. You are going to have to read books. You are going to have to journal. You are going to have to talk to other people. You are going to have to isolate sometimes to get through your thoughts. But once you get to a point where you've turned that corner, those processes that got you there are going to be almost automatic, because they're processional. They have a place in your day. They have a place in your life to keep you at that level. You've established a process that can help you get happy. Then it's more happiness and it's more feeling and more emotion. Slow the train down. Get off the carousel and get on a train forward. That's what I try to tell people all the time. Take the steps necessary within yourself to identify what you're really feeling. Because anger is not, like, it's not acceptable as an answer if you're really trying to have healing. I'm mad. Okay, what are you mad about? Well, I'm mad at the world. Can you change the world? No. Well, what are you mad about? Well, I'm mad about this. Okay, can you change that? No. All right, well, what can you change in that regard? Can you go over here? This is something I've been dealing with a lot. If I drive through my town to my home, and I know this isn't on mental health, but I think it ties back in, so bear with me. If I go home and I drive along the way and I see a trash on the side of the road, and I just dismiss it, who do I expect to pick that up? Who am I bypassing my problem for and expecting someone else to solve it? You know what I mean? Yeah. Who am I expecting to come along and do that? Who am I expecting to come along and fix my problems? Am I blaming, my local government? Am I blaming my healthcare professionals? Who am I blaming for my problems? Stop it. You have to take ownership of the life that you live. I can't change the world, but you know what? I see somebody right over here who's hungry. I see a homeless person right now, right through these trees. I can go over there and I can offer that person $5. What do they do with it? I don't know. Or I can drive 2 miles down the road to the Amish store, get a sandwich, chips, and a drink for $6, come back up here and give them that. Say, hey man, I hope tomorrow's a little better. Now, you can say I did them something that you just don't know what that act of kindness is going to do for that person. Obviously, I know this person. Obviously, I know they have some mental health issues that are bigger than sitting down and have a conversation with. But that right there might give them trust that the person that walks up to them isn't going to talk shit to them, that isn't going to say this or that to them. You know, I am constantly looking at ways that I can improve my mental health and kindness and love by trying to reach out to people like that. I don't know what giving them a sandwich might do today, but I'm going to do it. You know, and I'm not saying that because you're here. I would do that regardless. Right. I'm trying to take care of the world that I can change. I'm trying to take care of the things that I can control. I can't end hunger at a mass level. I can feed that guy. I can't end pollution at a world level. I can pick up that trash I see in the parking space over there. I just think it's accountability. If you want to create change yourself and work outward. That's really what it is. And if you're struggling, if you're sad, if you're mad, start identifying the things that make you mad, sad, angry, whatever, and start working through those things. You can never understand why it makes you mad if you don't ask that question. And for me, I have to write those things down. So slow down, feel yourself out, try to understand yourself. And when you can't understand yourself, seek help outside of that. And be forgiving. You're going to fuck up. You're going to try things that you are sure will work and help you, and they're going to fail. And you will do things that you think are stupid, ignorant, and a waste of time, and those might be the very things that help you. You have to remain open. This life is too valuable to give up on. And I say, you know, I was at the point where I didn't think life was worth living, and right now I am clawing and scratching for every second I can get. Like I said, I'm training for my 75th birthday because men in my family don't get there. So, you know, I'm looking 37 years in the future, but 37 years in the future starts with my next meal, my next training, my next cup of coffee. Like those things all impact my ability to live a long life. So I better choose wisely.
Dude, I can't tell you how much this conversation has touched me, man. Like Austin told me, you know, he's like, dude, you're going to be blown away by that conversation. I can almost guarantee it. And he definitely wasn't wrong, man. So thank you so much, Brandon, for coming on here and sharing your truth, sharing your story. And I don't think you have you mentioned that, you know, you don't want to be on a stage like telling people how to live their lives and whatever, and you want to like keep it authentic, but you have such a powerful message, you know what I mean? And I think that you can do so much good in the world. You are doing so much good in the world, and you could do so much more if you're just willing to put yourself out there, you know what I mean? Like whether that be a retreat or whether that be getting guys together or whatever. It's a powerful message, man, and it left a lasting impression on me for sure.
Well, thank you. And I'll be honest with you. I'm just like everybody else. I'm a little bit, I wouldn't say scared, because I'm not. I mean, I know exactly who I am. I've literally owned up to everything that I've ever done. I've apologized to people that I've wronged. So I feel like I'm in a good place. And I think that's a real relief of guilt for me too, is like, if you know you've wronged somebody, apologize to them. It may not bring resolution for them, but at least you're doing the work to say, hey, I own this. And, you know, for me, I have a big numbered following because of powerlifting. And I know a lot of the powerlifters that follow me still probably follow me because it's like, I don't want to hit that unfollow button, but they're not really connected to what I'm doing. So if you want to follow me, I say follow Brandon Lilly 3. You'll get the truth. You'll get the dose of everything that we talked about here. Yeah. But my alternate page is Peace, Love, and Meat. It's with my friend Casey Bard, Brandon Langlois, and then also Terrence Mitchell's contributing some there, as well as other coaches. But it really is, I put it up on my page, and the people that followed over, you know, it's a much smaller audience. It's a much more like-minded audience, I would say. So if you really want to go deep dive, or you want to see more of that kind of peeling away the layers, that's the place to go for me, is Peace, Love, and Meat. I do a journal prompt every single day. I do a workout 5 days a week. So, you know, I'm trying to remove the barrier of entry for people that are like, I don't know what I should do in the gym, or I don't know what I should eat, or I don't know how to write in a journal. You come to this page, you're going to see what we eat. You're going to learn techniques about cooking. You're going to learn techniques about life. You're going to learn techniques about training. You're going to learn about training. You're going to learn about, you know, poetry and art and all these other things, just shared more, maybe more condensed, because I know the audience is in line with what I'm saying. So I still encourage people to check out my actual page, because that's where I put myself. But if you want more like guided ideas, Peace, Love, and Meat is where I'm at over there. So I'm not against putting out more. I'm just I'm about trying to talk to the right people and say the right things that I think will help people, not necessarily put people in a corner of failure or success. It's like everything that I have is always just like this symbiotic. It's going to have ebbs and flows. There's going to be days that this works and feels good, and there's going to be days that it feels like it's tearing you apart. But stay the course.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And what about your podcast? You want to plug your podcast too, where people can find
so
it?
So we have two podcasts. I do the Be Legendary podcast by Sornex. Actually very excited about that. We're 84 episodes in, I think. And we're, again, it's a constant revisiting of what we're trying to accomplish there. And I'll tell you, I think that there are some really good episodes. I think that there are some episodes where I could have been better. But I also think that there were some episodes where I thought, okay, I'm doing this for Sornex and I have to be perfect. And I think that caused some of the imperfections or some of the pressure to make it something that it shouldn't have been. I mean, the Peace, Love, and Meat podcast, which is usually just me and one other person broing out, has really helped me find my voice on the Be Legendary podcast, where instead of being like directive interview and just trying to make it sound like what it should sound like in my head, it's actually a conversation, and it's really enjoyable. It's given coaches a chance to talk a little more freely and openly about what they want to talk about, not just reps and sets, X's and O's. But the Sornex Be Legendary podcast is going to be high caliber individuals doing amazing things, trying to highlight their Peace, Love, and Meat is actually just going to, it's Casey and I call it our therapy session. It's like we just get up, we get on there and we just talk about our problems, talk about adversities that we've had in our life. I mean, Casey with Tactic Calories, he runs that business, and the manufacturing throughout this lockdown has just been unbelievable. So that's been a theme that we've talked about, my training evolution and some of the stuff we've talked about. So I think whatever you're looking for, I offer alternatives for either. If you just want somebody that's high motivation and training, check out my Brandon Lilly 3 page. You'll get a lot of that. You'll get a little bit of the other stuff. If you're looking more for guided help, Peace, Love, and Meat. If you're looking for more other people's highlights and talking to other coaches, Be Legendary. If you're looking for more of stuff like we've had here today, Peace, Love, and Meat podcast, and all of it circles back as a big thank you to Sornex. So, I'm just trying to share information that I think makes the world a little bit better and helps people live what we deem as legendary lives. That's where the hashtag Be Become comes from, because Sornex's mantra is Be Legendary. Whatever it is, if it's tighten the bolt on the rack, do it the best that you possibly can. But not everybody's there yet. So it's Be Legendary if you can, or just be yourself and then become something more. Like become. I don't even put the Be Legendary hashtag on there because it's like legendary is individual. I don't get to decide who's legendary, because I can tell you right now in this town, I know some fathers that have been out fishing with their kids for 4 hours this morning. I haven't done that. So on the scale of legendary fathers, they're kicking my ass right now. But, my son has baseball here in a couple hours, and I'm excited for that to slowly pick up again. I mean, never know what it's going to look like with all this lockdown, but he's excited to be around his friends, excited to be throwing the baseball around. And, that's where I make up time for not being that legendary father that was up fishing at 6 a.m. It's just maybe tomorrow we'll do that. And you have to forgive yourself. You can't be perfect. You can't do it all. Just have to do the best you can when you can.
Absolutely, man. What's great about this podcast, I think, for me, is the fact that I love this conversation so much, and now, I know I have the opportunity to go back and re-listen to it, because, dude, there were so many great takeaways on this conversation. So I just want to thank you again, man, for coming on and sharing your story, and I really do hope that you and I connect in person much sooner than later, man.
Absolutely, and whenever we get this thing together, this is your invite. I'll invite you to it, whatever dynamic it looks like. It originally started as an idea called Harvest this fall, where I was going to introduce people to game meats through appetizers, and then the main course was going to be chicken or beef or something more traditional. But that's evolved more into what I said. It was just kind of like a small network of maybe 5 to 20 guys. I don't know. I really don't know. But whenever that gets a little more solid, I'll give you the invite. I'd love to have you there, and I'd love to have your contributions, because it's going to be some really just people that I want to say thank you to in my own way. And thank you for having me on here, man. I really appreciate it. And it doesn't have to be this conversation that you listen to. I'm happy to talk with you on the phone anytime or text you or whatever. And that's something else I would encourage, maybe as a final note. Throughout this lockdown time, I've been in 5 groups of 3 men. Just kind of like one with a guy named Adam and Matt. That's a little bit more of like the bullet point check-ins, like got up at this time, trained at this time, did my, whatever, got my projects done, blah, 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 boom, 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 boom. Just a check-in accountability. Casey and Brandon, that's through the Peace, Love, and Meet. We text kind of talking about family stuff or business stuff, just a little bit more massage of a conversation that way. Yep. And then my group with Chris and Jay is all gym training related. And then my last group, which is Terrence and my buddy Moose, this is the deep dive kind of accountability group where we go a little deeper, we share a little bit more. So I've got 4 to 5 groups at any given time, and they're casual. I mean, like they kind of carry a conversation throughout the day, but they've kept me on track. They've helped me avoid some pitfalls because it's like Moose will share something. I'm like, I was getting ready to do the same kind of thing or make the same mistake. So learning from others' mistakes has been a big valuable point for me too, because growing up, my dad would say, don't do this because, and I would go do it because, you know what I mean? So it's, I'm trying to learn from others' mistakes. I'm also trying to learn from others' lessons as far as like when they tell me something or they share something, I try to apply it to myself. So it's a long, beautiful road, man. And I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here, and I'm glad we had this conversation. Hopefully it does some good in the world.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you so much, man. I hope you have a beautiful day, dude, and I hope to link up with you again soon, man.
Oh, can't be soon enough. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to My Backstory. Stay motivated and stay connected off the show. Follow at my_backstory_ to be a part of the journey to recovery and to see where your story goes. Or visit us online at hereismybackstory.com.